Welcome back to Mindful Endeavors. I am your host, New Age Alchemist, and joining us today is Jennifer Strong. How do you pronounce the last part?
McConaughey. It's kind of a tricky last one.
McConaughey. Okay,
Yes,
McConaughey.
you
Before we
got it.
continue, as always, we want to make sure that we disclose that we're not mental health professionals and we're not giving medical advice. We're just talking about the subject, how we relate to it, and how we see things from our perspective. And if there's anything that we do encourage, is we encourage for people to keep the conversation going, and if they do need help, to go ahead and seek it. All right, so Jennifer, like I said, I saw you on my buddy's podcast, and you know, I think it was a good one, and I definitely want to, to have you on here so you can spread your messages here as well. Uh, really quick, really quick, introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm Jennifer Strong McConaughey, and I'm a lifelong outdoor adventure athlete. And I have a new book coming out. And that's kind of why I've started doing podcasts and doing more on social media and talking about all of this more so than I did in my previous life. And so the book is called Go Far: How Endurance Sports Can Help You Win at Life. And it is available for pre-sales right now. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's on Target, it's on Penguin Random House. You can also go to your local bookseller. I live in Wichita, Kansas, and I have a couple local bookstores that are going to have the book in stock, and I'm going to do signed copies. So if you decide you want to buy the book, you can go out and pre-order it today, and then it will come out officially on September 28th. And so as soon as it comes out, it'll come straight to you. So right now I'm just trying to go out and kind of talk about the endurance sports and being an outdoor athlete and that kind of thing, to promote the book, but also talk about kind of how that ties into mental health and how the outdoors has really helped me in that journey.
And that's perfect with what we're trying to do here on the podcast. I've mentioned this before, but one of the main driver behind the podcast was just how little mental health is really talked about in the mainstream, how little importance it usually gets, and I think it got a little worse during 2020, and that's kind of what it was like. All right, this is the final straw. I mean, I want to at least try to do something. So this is where I'm at, and yeah, like the one thing I do want to tie it with is the outdoors, because I know personally, like when I was dealing with some of the depression that came from 2020, going out to fish and actually learning how to fish helped me out a lot. So I mean, what some of my struggles here is just obviously being isolated from people because of the lockdowns and everything, but then also having my family in another state and not being able to like go out there and support them and then worry
Yeah,
about all
so
this other
hard.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a little difficult for me, and I know other people had it way worse. So that's kind of why I was just like, okay, I want to try to cover as many topics as I possibly can, and then if the outdoors can provide an outlet, you know, I want to make sure that I can at least share that, and then bring on as many guests that also have had either similar experiences or have seen similar experiences through other people.
For sure, for sure. And I feel like, I mean, I have been an outdoor lover my entire life. I've always been active. My parents really ingrained like being outside every day. And I started running when I was really young. I did like my first running race when I was 7. And then as a kid, I did triathlons and I did lots of road races, like 5Ks in small towns and that kind of thing. And I did competitive sports, and I did sports in college too. But it kind of goes into, okay, so you kind of enter adulthood, right? And everyone's just kind of left on their own to figure out mental health. All of a sudden, you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to structure my life? How am I going to work? How am I going to take care of myself? And that's kind of a hard transition. And so, by getting into adventure racing and triathlons, that is kind of something that helped me transition to that adult world. And then that was sort of built in and it was part of my everyday workday. I'm definitely a morning person. I kind of shut off after 9 p.m., which is the complete opposite of my husband. So I like to get up early. I know that's not always popular, but that is a really good way that I've found to kind of prioritize What do I need each day to be successful? So I get up early and I like to exercise, but other people might find that they enjoy journaling or reading or just
Mm-hmm.
taking some time to do yoga or light stretching or something to get going. So getting up early has definitely helped me. Another thing is that movement. I try to move every single day. And again, like some days I might be doing a long run. I like to do long runs on the weekends. I like to do multi sport. So I try to do lots of different sports. That kind of harkens back to like those triathlon days of swimming, biking, and running. Um, Changing things up keeps me from like getting in like a routine and getting stale. And so I like to swim and bike and run and try new things like kayaking or supboarding or river surfing when I'm in Colorado or somewhere that I can do that type of thing. But probably the biggest thing is movement every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if I don't have time for a full workout or it's a rest day, I have a Siberian Husky dog. And so he has to be walked every day or he gets crazy.
Yeah.
So we have built in at least a dog walk happens every day. And today it's 100 degrees in Kansas. And so again, the dog is going to be walked early, or I didn't have time this morning because I went to the gym. And so the dog and I will stay up late and I'll probably get him wet or something first before we walk, because we prioritize that movement. If you're not, someone that likes to run or bike, or you can pick another sort of like outdoor exercise. I like to do, one of the things I started doing during COVID is taking some of those inside workouts that I would normally do at a gym, and doing them outside. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do yoga on my patio. And that's one of those things that you might like go on vacation and do like an outdoor yoga class or do like a special class. But during COVID, we all just kind of, to kind of fight off some of that isolation and the change up in those routines, I was trying to come up with ways to do something new and really take care of that mental health. And so yoga on the patio, my kids have a swing set equipment. I came up with like workouts to do on that with like the rings and the trapeze.
Mm-hmm.
I For some reason my husband had a tire and he saved it for me, because he's like, I know you'll do something with it. And so just like a tire from a car, not one of those huge giant tractor tires. If you can get a hold of one of those in your backyard, even better. I kind of came up with like a or a car tire workout.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so this sort of idea of, okay, first of all, we're going to get outside every day and we're going to move every day. And whether that's, just a simple walk or a backyard workout or playing with the kids or the dog, or like, getting the kids in some sort of water or sprinkler thing. Like it doesn't have to be a specific workout. Now, as an endurance sports athlete, my stuff is usually a workout, but even if you're just really like not feeling the movement kind of thing, foam rolling, stretching, just kind of like some like light vinyasa. Like those are ideas of like if you're just really starting out and you're like, Jennifer, I don't want to run ultra runs like you do, some of those things. So being outside every day and moving in some way every day are keys to mental health and balance in my life right now. And I started that as a young person in sort of the corporate working world, and I've carried that through because it's absolutely necessary. And I feel like,
Agreed.
like your employer or the demands of like needing to work, like that will take over. That will demand that you stay focused and you're on the computer or at your job, and so you have to create the space, you have to create the time, and by making it a priority. And we all have the same amount of hours in the day, and so we make
Mm-hmm.
time for what's important. So I think that whether you stay up late or get up early or go outside for a walk during your lunch hour, that was always one of my secrets. If I really couldn't get anything else done, I'd go walk around the neighborhood at my office. And so, whatever little break that you can find. And one thing that did come out of the struggles of COVID is I think a lot of people realized that they did really like going for walks outside, and they
Yeah.
made time for it in a way that like we weren't making time for it before. So those are kind of the things that I like to do. And I love that you fish, because I'm definitely not a fisher. I've done it a few times. I always loved the bait. As a kid, I was like obsessed with like the sparkly little, the tackle box, right? You got to have your
Yeah.
accessories. So that's about as far as I've gotten. But I'd like to introduce my children to it, you know. So that's on my goals list.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
it's funny
it's
that
funny that
you talked
you
about
talked
like
about like
movement
movement
and
and
also like how well, because it's really underrated. Like a lot of people like go about the days sitting down, like like especially now that a lot of the jobs like that you go to school for are like tech jobs, different office jobs and stuff like that. And you're sitting down a lot, sitting down for 8 hours, and you go home, you sit down and watch Netflix, and then you're just sitting down all the time. And
Sitting all day.
yeah, and I think insurance companies have now basically equated that to the modern day smoking, like where it's like
I was gonna say that. Yeah, I just read that as well.
yeah, and it's ridiculous because like so I started like my first office job at like was it 2019, and then 2 years later I ended up trying out MMA, and then that's when the trainer that was teaching me how to kick and how to box and everything, he was just like, your hips are really tight, and I can tell just by looking at you. We're not even training yet, but I can already tell your hips are really tight. And he was doing all these tests, like he would have me squat like down for like 5 seconds and then get back up. And he was like, oh, well, see, like your left hip is tighter than your right hip because like I see you when you squat, you're immediately deviating to the left and you're not, center or anything like that. And it just like the first 2 months of training were mostly rehabilitative because it's like, I can't
Yeah,
teach you how to kick until I can, unlock all your muscles that require you
yeah.
to kick. And
Isn't
it's
that
just ridiculous.
fascinating? It's like everyone I should have that. Like that should be a part of like everyone's basic training, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
you know, you start off and you kind of like build that balance, yoga, Pilates, like MMA coaching, like that kind of thing, so that you can have, you know, the strong core and the hips that are
Mm-hmm.
balanced and even, and then you can be a powerhouse in whatever sport you're off doing. But yeah, you have, kind of have to start at the beginning, and I think that that's another thing is like the balance and the mobility training right now. I'm really into that. I got a steel mace, which I
Oh,
know is kind of big in MMA training because it's like mobility and movement.
mm-hmm.
So I've kind of been having fun with that. You could do that in your backyard as well, or you know, a park or something if you're in a big city.
Yeah, I was training with the mace. I was also training with like these two. They looked like bowling pins, but they're a little bit longer.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
got some. Okay, I got some for my husband for his birthday. So that's in a
Hmm.
few weeks. So I hope he's not listening because I ruined the surprise. But yeah, I got some steel clubs too. So I'm excited to. So do you use those? What was that like?
So at first, it was really difficult to stay put, like the rest of my body, and only move like my upper body, like because again, a lot of my leg muscles, my hip muscles were all really tight. So as soon as I would move forward, and or like if like I would kind of do like the swings, like back and forth, like you
Uh,
can tell that on the apex of the swing, my body was just out of line, like, and it was just at first it was just to identify other stuff that was wrong with me, and then after a while it's just a matter about like functional movement, which is I think what a lot of training is going towards, and that with good
yeah,
reason because a lot of it has, I mean, that's been neglected. And I mean, to be fair, like we're still understanding the science of all that. I mean, we've only discovered vitamins like what in the 50s, so it's like still
good
relatively
point.
new.
Right? Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like I always tell people like, oh, you can tell who's really up to date by like if they're still stuck with like conventional training and like they want to like just, oh, you need to be feeling sore the next day. Like no, like you don't necessarily need to feel sore the next day. It's all about volume, and like it doesn't really make sense that if you train really hard one day but then you're so sore you can't do anything the next 2 days, or you can't do anything properly the next 2 days. So then what's the point, you know?
Right. Yes, exactly. And that's kind of why I do a lot of multi-sport is that the great thing is that you can go out and you can run really far on Monday, then you go hop in a kayak and you're using totally different muscles. And
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of learned all of that when I was doing triathlons and adventure racing. Then you can hop on your bike the next day and swim the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're working different muscles in different ways and you're staying engaged and you're not bored. But that functional training like really builds on that. And so like even though I'm an endurance sports athlete, I feel like you can't have success at you can't just go out and like power through, especially as you get older. You can do it when you're young. Power through just like incessant like repetitive training. You're going to get injured if you don't have that functional mobility based training for
Oh
sure.
yeah, and back to the whole thing about overtraining, like because the main sport I've done a lot of sports, but the main one has always been soccer, and growing up in high school, it was always like you need to run like this many miles, and then we still need to do sprints after that. And then when I was training for MMA, I know the one thing I noticed when I first started was we were doing drills, but it was mostly for like controlling how to breathe and essentially using your ATP output and your oxygen as efficiently as possible. And just from like 3 weeks of that, I had a game like I think the following Monday because the season just started after the 3 weeks, and my endurance was like almost to what it was in high school. And even though I wasn't training like that, and it's just like
That's
just by
awesome.
learning how to breathe, stretching, unlocking different mobility, like a
Yeah.
lot of mobility I never knew I had.
Yeah.
So
Isn't
it was
that
just really
awesome?
intense. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I
yeah,
played
and like,
a little bit of soccer back in, I mean, not as much as you did, but I played it. I did indoor, and then I did a sports team, in high school, and I loved it because that's really the only team sport I ever did because I'm kind of, the individual sports are kind of my zone, but I liked doing soccer because of the running portion, right?
mhm. Yeah, and then now that I'm more into like mental health, right? Because I mean, I've always talked about it. I just never really, I guess you can say, I never really advocated for it as much as I do now. But now that I see different aspects of the training, whether it be soccer, whether it be even like, because I did do a little bit of jogging, like actually just as like training for a marathon, right? Like, but I just never did the marathon. So, but I do see how a lot of that really translates to just general life. Like you're talking about, like, I mean, I'm sure you talk about it in your book because I mean, just I'm assuming that just by the title, but like when you're looking at endurance, that requires a lot of patience, that requires a lot of determination, and you got to really be mentally focused. And because I know that whenever I've just jogged for like a mile, like sometimes the thoughts that I don't want to be thinking about creep in, and it just kills the entire mood, right?
For sure. There's definitely that sort of like the mental focus aspect. And so when you train and you get used to that discipline, you can have a lot of other areas that everything becomes easier, and you can have success in other areas of your life because you've put yourself through those steps of being disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say like that's the beauty and like the ugliness of endurance sports is that time alone with your thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's super important for mental health because if you're always, we have so much going on, all the notifications and sounds and everything. Like if you're always like filling your brain with the outside noise, you're not connecting with like your internal thoughts. And so that's a big, I talk about that a lot in the book, but that's a key aspect of mental health as well, is trying to find that silence and that time to find connect with like your internal thoughts and being positive and setting goals and that kind of thing. When you have that quiet and stillness, you can connect to those types of things.
Yeah, because I think part of that is that we have like the attention span of a goldfish now, like just as humans, like.
And it's all ages, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the grandparents are just as bad. Like they're like even worse because they get like a notification and then you've lost them and you're like, wait, you're supposed to be like, you're my mom, you're supposed to be listening and focusing. But yeah, so it's not like like I think the younger generations are probably more trained at kind of tuning stuff out. So we definitely have a lot coming at us as a society.
Yeah, because I mean, you can see it obviously in social media, and I mean, I rag up on social media a lot, but I also talk about the benefits. So it's not completely negative when it comes to that when I talk about that on the podcast, but you can see it there. Like, what was it? There was that one app that was called, what was it, Vine, that only allowed for 6-second
Yeah.
videos, right? And like, there was like a bunch of people that became famous from that, and a few of them crossed over into movies. And they would talk about how like that was so difficult for them because they couldn't, it was hard for them to stick to a script because they're only used to going for 6 seconds bursts, right? So it goes back to like the attention span. Like, and even people that consume all that stuff, it's like, all right, if there doesn't get to a point by 6 seconds, 10 seconds, or whatever, I'm done. You
Yeah.
know?
That is like the beauty of like ultra running and multi-day racing is that you have no choice but to like get comfortable with it taking a long time, which is kind of the opposite of what's going on in our society. And so like I think that you have to find whatever that is, that like maybe that's reading a long book, and I love to read on my Kindle on my phone, but like I also like an actual physical book as well, because it kind of takes me away from like the short attention span burst, and you can kind of connect with like a narrative and a story. So finding ways to clear some space, you know, like an hour that you devote to like one thing. That could be something that is, you know, again, we're not mental health professionals, but I've noticed a benefit to that, so that you can really focus on one thing, and that even if it's just 1 hour out of every day. I think that we're going to kind of need that, as more and more 6 seconds of things come at us.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad it's funny to say, but it's also really sad because it's like, you know, we don't read as much as we used to. And, you know, like I think, like you said, there is a lot of benefit to that. And, you know, that whole attention span decline affects a lot of different things. And again, another example is like, for example, sitcoms. Before sitcoms, you would have the theme song that opens up for like about a minute or so, right? Almost the entire song.
Yeah.
Now, like if you do that, like people will tune up, like, you know, tune off
Everybody
right away.
loses it. You just skip intro. I don't have time for the intro.
Exactly. Now you skip intro and everything. It's like, and it's really ridiculous, but at the same time, it's like it's hilarious because it's like we have all this technology, and you would think that we at least it would help us to kind of evolve, or you know, evolve certain aspects that need help, right? But it's actually devolving us in a lot
Right.
of different ways, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
part of that, I think, is because of the convenience aspect. Like there's a lot of convenience in our lives nowadays that we're spoiled to a certain degree. And
So spoiled.
absolutely, like, and like when we were talking about like training just to get healthy, like nobody wants to do that. Like who wants to like get punished or pay somebody to get, you know, to help you learn, like teach you how to punish yourself so you can, you know, improve, get a little bit healthy. It's, you know, it's not, I guess, like not pretty, not, it's crimey, but you know, we need to work for it, right?
Right, for sure. Yeah, that they can't escape the working for it part of it. Every goal takes, you know, some sort of like sweat equity of some sort.
Yeah, I like that sweat equity. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and back to what you were saying about like when you're running, when you're doing like long distance running. Yeah, like I think a lot of people are afraid of being alone with their thoughts. That's kind of another reason why we consume a lot of media.
Yeah.
I know I was guilty of that before COVID, but as COVID was approaching, not because of COVID, but just coincidentally, like I started breaking away from that habit. But and that really happened. That really came about because when I moved from California to Texas, you would think that I would have like Spotify on for the entire ride. Actually, all but like maybe 6 hours of that 24-hour car ride was just in silence. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
You needed it. You like emotionally, like spiritually, mentally, physically, like knew that you needed it. You needed that like break.
yeah, because a lot of that, like you're exactly right, because a lot of that was really preparing myself to be like, okay, I'm in a new state. I'm alone. I don't really have my family out here. I have friends and everything, but I don't really have my family. And a lot of that was trying to mentally prepare myself, like, okay, you've already made the decision. There's no turning back. There's no, you can't bail on this. Like you got to see it all the way through, you know. And it was a lot of that, and then it was just also just seeing like the beautiful landscape from, you know, from California all the way to Texas, because I took the more scenic route, because you can take essentially either close to the path close to the border, or the one that kind of goes through like northern Arizona and northern New
Oh
Mexico.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
so
and
cool.
oh yeah, it was really pretty. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
I got to stop by different spots. There was one spot in New Mexico that I stopped by because like I just quickly Googled like, you know, places to eat, and there was I think the restaurant was called Chili Hillies or something like that. And yeah, so I got off in New Mexico. I think what was the town called? Either it was called Edgewater or Edgewood, and I took the wrong turn, and I was going straight towards Colorado. And but it got to a point where like literally it was just nothing but desert, and then you would see like 6 houses, then like another half mile, another 6 houses. So it's like kind of like a Breaking Bad type of situation. It's like, oh no, I'm gonna get like kidnapped here. And then it turns out that that place was actually right off the freeway. It's just that I turned, I went the wrong direction. but like it was fun exploring and
Yeah,
just
you got a chance to just kind of explore, and I love Tex-Mex food. Like it's my favorite. So it's always
Yeah,
fun.
I love Tex-Mex, but I'm more used to just regular Mex, I guess.
Right, right, which is good as well, right? Like it's all good. So
But I mean, brisket though, it's just never like I'd say I cannot live without brisket anymore, and I think yeah, I mean, with good reason. But yeah, so it does require a lot of endurance, a lot of mental training as well to be like an endurance athlete because I mean, it's not something you can necessarily do like, all right, I'm gonna do 5 sets of this muscle group and I get to go home. Like, no, you have to
right.
be there
Yeah.
for a
Yeah, it's
long
not a
time.
20-minute weight workout, which I like those days where that comes up. But yeah, the definitely like the hours of putting in the training. So I did some stuff in a 5-day race in Namibia and climbing some of the seven summits, some of like the mountaineering climbs. There's one climbing in Russia. That was 10 days.
Oh
So
wow.
that takes a lot of patience and drilling down, and a lot of organization and focus to have all your gear together. So some of the all of that kind of stuff is talked about in the book. I just kind of try to hit on mountain experience, desert experience, ocean swimming. I've done some swims across some famous straits of the world, like swimming the Dardanelles Strait from the continent of Europe to the continent of Asia in like this huge body of open water. That's where some real mental toughness came in.
Dang.
You're just like suddenly just kind of alone, and yes, there's other people swimming and there's support boats, but like they're a long ways away and you're alone in the ocean between two continents. And
Dang.
all of that like mental toughness and training really comes into play. So mountain, desert, ocean, jungle, doing like ultra runs and that kind of thing in New Zealand, and running by waterfalls and along like ancient paths. So all that kind of builds, and I tell a lot of those stories and then kind of drill down like lessons learned from each thing, and then sort of like a framework of like, okay, this is all out there and crazy, and maybe a normal person wouldn't do that, but I kind of do like a 3-pillared approach of like steps that you can take, and like how you can achieve some of these things. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
lining out some of that how to information. But yeah, definitely, alone in the ocean, or, alone climbing up a mountain covered in snow and ice, and there's a blizzard and you're freezing and exhausted. And how do you get up? And then how do you get down?
Yeah.
All of that. So once I think you kind of do some of that, like normal life, it has its challenges, but you know that you can make it through each day because you've lived through some of those experiences, and you can build on that. Um,
Yeah. I mean, because I do agree that yeah, like you can build off of that, but the problem is, at least in society, and I don't know what that is attributed to, and I kind of sometimes I don't want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole because I know it's going to eventually lead to politics, and I don't try to talk about politics on that podcast. Not because I'm not trying to push one thing or the other, it's just that that's the whole reason why like mental health gets muddled because it gets political. But in any case,
right.
yeah, in any case, it needs to. I feel like that needs to be started younger in a sense. I mean, parents do their best, right? Like my parents did their best, but at the same time, there's also external factors that can influence that. And
Sure.
I mean, like just the way like you're told, yeah, be nice to somebody, but you're also not told like how to interact with different personalities. You're not shown how to think on the spot. So when you do get a personality that doesn't mesh well with you, you know how to diffuse the situations to a point where it doesn't control your life.
That's a really good point. I like that you use the word diffuse the situation. It's like almost like people need what is that, meditation or mediation training,
Mm-hmm.
like how to diffuse a situation, how to be neutral, how to be diplomatic, like diplomatic training or that kind of thing. So I think sometimes you get that in a professional setting, in your job, depending on what your job is. But yes, I think that definitely that's a really good point. Those are good skills that they're kind of like the soft skills. You talk about hard skills and soft skills, like they're more of
Mm-hmm.
like a soft skill, but they're so important.
Yeah, they're absolutely important, and it's one of those things that I feel like the whole attention span thing is what's keeping us from truly understanding another person. Because when you look at somebody like maybe they gave you like 1 or 2 sentences. You're already, all right, I already have a label placed on them. I know what they're going to be like. And that's why you get a lot of times, like, I mean, I've gone interactions with either myself or somebody else that I see interacting with somebody else. And they always go like, oh, I thought you were going to be, more of a jerk. And it's like, well, did you take the time to actually get to know them a little bit more? Like, it's like,
Right. Yeah. 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 It's hard not, it's like we want to be open minded and not stereotype. And I mean, I hate being put in a box. I mean, who doesn't, right? Because
mm-hmm.
everyone's an individual, and we know that like just because this, and this doesn't mean that I'm this way. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I mean, technology definitely helps in a lot of aspects, right? But when we consume too much, we lose what made us like, I guess what I want to say, like what, like in my opinion, that what basically allowed us to survive as a human race, the sense of community, we tend to lose that, right? And there's like a cliche that kind of goes by like, you gotta disconnect to reconnect, disconnect from the
yeah.
internet to connect to
Yeah.
the outside. And I think that's where like the outdoors kind of comes in, because it's like you don't know how badly you're disconnected from nature and the world until you actually experience the outdoors, and for more than just like a park or something, just going out hiking on a hiking trail, or going out running on a hiking trail, things like that, right?
Yes, and like you're going to get sweaty and you're going to get dirty. And there's
Mm-hmm.
like a beauty in that. Like the first 10, 20 minutes are not going to be comfortable because it's hot and it's humid or it's cold. But then it gets really great because you kind of get comfortable. Then you go back into that air conditioning and you're like, oh my, I kind of liked like that nature feeling. So, try that, trying to get outside every day. Doesn't matter what the temperature is, like you're still making an effort to go out and do something. And I feel like in this last year, I've really reconnected with like my hyper local stuff. Like I've started a field journal of all of my hyper local like trees and plants and shrubs and flowers. So you can buy books and that kind of thing, but like they're like the Midwest or the West or the Northeast. Like I want to know like what is that flower in my neighbor's yard? What is this weird weed growing? What are these trees? I've always wanted to be the kind of person that could like identify the trees. And so I'm working on it so that I can teach my children, because that's how you learn these kinds of things, because somebody tells you that's a redwood tree or that's an oak or that's a cottonwood. And so I'm really making an effort to kind of relearn and continue learning that so that I can pass it down to the next
Mm-hmm.
generation. And so it's like, okay, well, what do I do outside? Well, you don't just have to exercise. You don't just have to move. You could sort of like study your surroundings. My kids and I are collecting a lot of bugs lately. That's a super specific thing, but really learning your neighborhood, learning your city, learning your town, going and exploring by bike or foot or scooter or swim, all
Yeah.
kinds of options there. So my book kind of hits on some of that of like, so how do you get out? What do you do? How do you explore? I talk about some of those kinds of ideas, because it's easy to say go outside, but then you go outside and it's hot and sweaty and you're getting sunburned. And so here's some other things that like you can have fun doing. And I mean, I feel like, sports, soccer and kickball, those are super fun things to do outside with friends and stuff. And you're
Mm-hmm.
connecting with your community. In my individual sports, there is a community, but a lot of times you're by yourself or with a training partner. But how great to have your kind of kickball and soccer communities. I bet that's a really good way to really like connect with people.
Oh, it definitely helped improve my social life for sure, because I got to meet a bunch of different people, and some of those people I still hang out with even though we don't play on the same team, because we switch up the team, we shuffle around, so there's different players, and we get to meet different players, and I've definitely gotten a lot from it, so that's why I still keep doing it. I don't care so much about the competition, although I do want to win. I don't want to necessarily be last. It's like I used to be a super competitive person, and a lot of that toned down. But I'm still competitive in the sense like, okay, if I'm not going to be first, I'm sure as heck not going to be last. At the very least, that's the main goal. The bonus goal, or the stretch goal, is to actually win the championship. And I'm gonna try my hardest, but if I don't win, at the very least, I played with a bunch of cool people, and we all got along, and we all had fun. And
Awesome.
yeah, and the thing is too, like I tell people all the time, like, you don't necessarily have to go out to go fish. There's going out for a walk, going out for a hike is the simplest and probably the cheapest way you can really enjoy the outdoors. And it teaches us too. Like I mean, for me, the outdoors definitely humbled me a lot, especially seeing how nature, if you're not careful with it, it can definitely hurt you. It can definitely
It's
kill
so
you.
powerful. And it kind of
Yeah,
like reminds you of your place, right? Like we had this huge lightning and thunderstorm and it was great, but like it was powerful and it kind of like reacclimates you to like your role in the universe.
yeah,
Also
and
like going like interacting with animals. I took my children to like a wildlife park and you could sort of just like appreciate like the creativity and the like the intricacy of different types of animals and species. And like when you really get to like get close and interact with them, you're like, wow, this is such a neat creation.
yeah, and then you find out which animals you can interact with and which you can't. Like you cannot
Right.
interact with a boar. I've been chased by a few
Oh,
boar.
in
Yeah.
Texas?
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, I've heard about those crazy wild like what happened?
I didn't even think much of it to be honest. Again, because I guess the arrogance of me, because it's the first time being out there, and I'll attribute that to arrogance. I'll be honest. And I was as I was driving to this like super kind of secluded fishing spot. Like I saw like on the ranches leading up to that point, there was like one ranch that had like 8 boar just like I guess gunned down in front of their porch, like, waiting for somebody to pick them up, or I don't know, or leaving them there so that other boar don't go on the property. And I was just like, okay, that's the first time I've seen that. Okay. And then I go deeper into the forest. I see, deer, and I see a bunch of other stuff. And I'm all right, cool. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, so the spot of the pond that I was at had very limited bank access. So I saw there was much more on the other side, but I had to go through all the trees. So I went going through all the trees, and all of a sudden I hear the little pitter patter. Next thing you know, I'm running. I climb up a tree. I don't even know how I did
Oh
that.
my goodness.
I was just like climbing up a tree and
Oh my goodness.
yeah, I dropped my reel, my rod, and I was just like, okay, so yeah, I need to be more careful.
Oh wow. Yes, yes. Safety. And they're out there. The wild animals are out there. We had a mountain lion come into Kansas, which does happen, but it was caught on video so they could verify it. It's just
Mm,
roaming around a neighborhood like right by where I live. And it's like, that's so amazing. But it's also like there's all kinds of things roaming about, and you have to be careful. But yeah, I'm always like thinking like what would I do, and the fact that you were able to like scurry up a tree, that's good.
yeah, I don't know for how long I was up that tree. I want to say like maybe like 5 or 6 minutes, but it seemed like an eternity when I was up there.
I'm sure that all the adrenaline. And so how big were the boar?
So it was two like big ones. I want to say maybe like easily 100 pounds, maybe like 120 somewhere around there, and then like a bunch of little ones.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was a good maybe like 8 of them, and
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so I was just like no, and I've seen videos of that, and the funny thing that again, since that was my first time experiencing that, I never really thought about it like that. Oh well, I'm not alone in the forest, like
Yeah.
never thought about that. So, and I've seen, and I know people that a lot of times. I mean, I'm not trying to single a specific group out, but like a lot of times people are in concrete jungles. They never step onto the wilderness or anything like that. So they think what they see on TV is how nature plays out. Like Bambi, Bambi's dad, Bambi's mom, they're gonna be super friendly. And no, like that's not the case. Like you see bull elk and bull
Oh yeah.
deer just go
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah, yeah.
Respect. I think, yes, that it's the respect, like the interactions with the animals in the wilderness, is that you do have that respect for nature. And the same thing goes when you are climbing in a mountain. The weather
Mm-hmm.
comes in and the conditions change and you like feel that respect. And I love the water. I'm a huge water person, but I have been in oceans and seas swimming, and you feel like I am a guest in nature. Like
Mm-hmm.
nature is allowing me to be here, and I am just thankful that I am alive right now, because at any moment one thing could change, one condition could change, and I would just be at the mercy of the fates. So yes, keeping that healthy respect and awe for nature and the world around us.
Yeah, the healthy respect and just the what is the humility of it. Like I think that can go a long way with like conflict resolution, like not getting into conflicts over the meaningless things that we see people. How many fights have we seen on TV that started over a sports team? Like that's just ridiculous. Like the owner of the team doesn't even know you exist, and yet you're fighting over like because oh that team is better. You know, it's like does that really need to go on? Like, do arguments really need to go around that? Like, no, you can have discussions around it, which is different, and that's great. But I think being like humble a lot will definitely help. Well, I mean, obviously, with anything, there's a balance because if you're too humble, people can stomp all over you. But then if you're not humble at all, then that's what we talk about, where you just kind of get into conflicts for no apparent reason. We can just diffuse a situation before it even starts.
Yeah, it's like the balance that we're seeking in all areas is finding that balance.
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, I'm gonna keep repeating this for every single podcast that when it comes up, but yeah, I think just being outdoors helps with that as well. And there's a lot of different, like you said, soft skills that we can take just experiencing the outdoors and bringing it to our overall life to enrich our mental health and overall like emotional health and everything.
And I just love that there's so many options. I mean, we've talked about like 10 or 12 different things people can do outside. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I like is that there's just a lot of different things and you can follow your interests. So you don't have to run, you don't have to go swim across a lake like I like to do in the summer, kind of like a wild swimming kind of thing. You can fish and you can find your niche and you can find your activity and choose what you want to do with your friends or family.
Mm-hmm.
And just automatically going out, it's automatically calming, right? And we all need a break from the screens and inside. So
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, we
beauty.
all need to hit the pause button sometimes just to kind of like gather our bearings and just kind of like really decompress a little bit. And
Yes.
I make the metaphor that it's like you're always like you're on the highway of life, right? Like you don't always have to be going 100 miles an hour. You can like slow down to one, and that's still progress. So
That's
don't like
awesome. I need to hear that. Yeah, because I'm a type A, go get them fast, 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 fast. And man, some days you gotta slow it down a little bit and take time to soak it all in for sure.
yeah, and that's where like reading books, like because I still got into that, like that has helped because I'm constantly going out to fish, going out to work, going out to train somebody, going out to the gym, coming home, preparing food, putting, making videos of food because I like to do that just as a hobby. And
Uh-huh.
then it's like a book just really slows me down completely, like, and it's just like one of those things. But I'm still enriching myself, so it's not like I'm completely stopped like on the highway. Just I'm just going a lot slower. That's all.
Right, right. You're taking a chance to slow down. And one of the things that I love to read the classics.
Mm-hmm.
So like classic literature, because it takes some patience, because oftentimes, 800 plus word page books, right? And you're like, how am I ever going to have the time? And in my book, Go Far, How Endurance Sports Help You Win at Life, I kind of equate reading big classic literature stories to endurance sports and how that kind of like that discipline required to start a book, finish it, kind of relates to the success of going far and finding that. So I that's kind of if anyone's looking for, of course, read my book, but if you're looking for something that you're kind of missing, read a classic. Charles Dickens, I read. I'm getting ready to read Bleak House, and I read Great Expectations earlier this year, and it did take me a while to get through, but I loved it. And you can kind of like compare and contrast. I also recently read Around the World in 80 Days, which is I think I've had the copy that I bought when I was like in seventh grade, and I just never got around to reading it. I read Journey to the Center of the Earth, and so I've had this book on my bookshelf for 30 years. And so I read it recently and kind of created a sports event around that. So I took Around the World in 80 Days, a classic travel book, and I created 8 sports that I was going to do in 8 days. And because I'm an endurance adventure athlete and I like self-propelled sports, I did 8 sports that were endurance self-propelled based. So I didn't do soccer. I did, like scootering or pack rafting or hiking, because my book Go Far is a kind of a travel log about different travels around the world. And so by reading this historical travel novel that influenced travel writing still today, I sort of captured some of the spirit, studied like the classic text, right? Implemented my own sort of like multi-sport outdoor adventure, and tied it into my own book. And so that was really fun, to take a classic and kind of tie it all together and apply it. And just each day I had to be super organized and have my different sports lined up. Now, sometimes I, had my children, so I had to either get up early or do something in the evening that was kid friendly, or other days I was able to escape and go swim at the pool. So that was really fun, to kind of, and my Instagram, I'm sure we'll share that later. I kind of did some pictures, and I try to do that kind of thing of like, okay, I like to read, I like to do sports. Let's kind of tie this together. Let's create some like tie-ins. So that's kind of a way that I bridge the two together. Is reading can sometimes be, and inside, I do like to read outside, reading by the pool, reading on a patio, reading in the mountains, reading when you're camping. I like to just kind of tie that stuff together and create these like experiences, and then share those with my friends and my family and my children. And that's another way to kind of enjoy the outdoors in a way that maybe isn't quite obvious.
Yeah, I mean that's perfect. And then like the fact that you're putting all out there on social media, it's great because it's just you're going to be another resource that people count on, and that's a
Absolutely.
good thing.
And I want to be a resource. The other day, so it's super hot here. I'm trying to get my runs in. I like to run outside. I will run inside, but like, if I can run outside, I do. So I have a pool that I can use that's nearby. So I ran to the pool and I did like water exercise. It's like lifting weights in the pool, right? So it's kind of taking like the traditional water aerobics, but taking that up a notch. And there's some special gear that you can order, or you can just kind of use what you have. Like I had some rubber coated weights, and I have a rubber coated kettlebell. I have a medicine ball, and so I did all of these like strength training moves in the pool, and it's so cool because like it feels totally different than on land. And you can throw in some of like those old fashioned like water aerobics moves too. But it was really about like, okay, I don't know if you've ever like watched like Laird Hamilton, like the surfer workout where they go in Hawaii and get like those giant rocks at the bottom, and they like walk along the ocean floor. So I mimicked that with like my medicine ball and like walked along the pool bottom, and it like the weight tries to pull you down. And so that's kind of like breath and endurance training and weight training. And then I got the kettlebell and was doing swings and jumps, and I had a push plate that's a special water tool and a kickboard, and then the weights. I did all kinds of arm movements, and so I was exhausted and it was hard, but I was cooled off and refreshed, and then I ran back home. So I got my endurance workout, I got my strength training, I got in the water, I got outside. I enjoyed a super fun summer workout. You can do that in the winter too. Run, bike to the indoor YMCA pool, whatever pool, and do that, and then run or bike home and just put a couple extra layers on. So that's another example of stuff that I try to share. Outside of just the book, I try to kind of share that kind of stuff online, so that I always just like to come up with things and invent them. So WaterX is another idea.
No, yeah. That I've seen videos of Navy SEALs train underwater with kettlebells, and
Yeah.
you
And there's
instantly reminded me of that.
you kind of have to research the different moves. I mean, if you know strict training, you can kind of the form and stuff to do. But yeah, just looking online and coming up with workouts, and that's just a hobby that I like to do. But again, it's getting me outside. At first I'm just standing in the pool, and I really wanted that quiet time so I could focus and be away. And then it got really quiet. And I was like, oh, I'm just standing here lifting weights. Because, like you're in the gym or you've got a video or music going, and I'm just in the water quietly lifting weights, counting my sets. But that's super important because that's that, connection to like your spirit and your mental, emotional side. And so I think that even though I was kind of fighting it at first, I got in the groove and had time to think and look at the trees and the beauty around me. And so just kind of piling it, all of it. We'll just sum the whole conversation up with a Run WaterX run workout right there.
No, and that's great. Like I said, more resources, having that available online, even around your the circle of friends that you have, like that's, I think, one piece of advice that I would probably say to somebody, like be a resource for somebody. Obviously, pick your friends wisely, pick the people they want to be around wisely, because you want people to elevate you. If at the very least, you don't want people to bring you down. So even if they don't elevate you, at least they're not bringing you down, right? But that's one of the things that I would advise people. Like, it helps when you have people that don't contribute negativity, really. And for me, like, I want to be a resource for some of my friends. Like, hey, if you want to just talk, I mean, I may not know what to say, but sometimes at the very least, just venting it helps out a lot.
Yeah,
So,
just talking through it, just saying it
mm-hmm,
out loud, having somebody to talk about things with. I kind of have a section in my book about, okay, so like if you want to achieve a big goal, so you have this idea and you have this goal, you talk about it, you talk about it out loud, you share it with someone, you crowdsource. Hey, I have this idea, but then you talk to somebody and they have this idea, and together you come up with really cool ways to achieve your goal.
mm-hmm, absolutely, and again, the sense of community, really.
Yes, yes.
Um, if so, when social media is used for that, like, I've met so many people online through fishing because of that. And I've met through the podcast, I'm meeting people that, like, you're an ultra runner, triathlete. And, I've met Zach, I've met other people, and it's other people that not necessarily do the same hobbies that I do, but they all encompass the main aspect, which is like, okay, it enriches people's lives, and, and contributes to their mental health in a very positive way. And that's really good. That's another thing that I try to do myself on, in terms of my social media presence. That, okay, well, I'm posting pictures of fish. There's a bunch of people posting pictures of fish. I want to make sure, at the very least, if I want to make the caption very good, to a sense where it's either going to make you laugh or it's going to make you think.
That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah. Everybody needs a good laugh, and we all need, yeah, we all want to have those moments to stop and think as well. That's a really good goal.
yeah. It's like, I mean, I may not post a whole lot, but when I do post, I want to make sure at the very least it's good, or gives some other aspect to something. Like, sometimes it's really weird, like Instagram's algorithm. Like, sometimes, like, even a little panfish like this big will get a lot more likes than a giant bass. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess it's different. So
Right. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe that's just what people needed to hear at that day and time.
yeah, and like, there was one time where my fishing rods were stolen out of my car right in front of where I lived.
Oh
And
no.
rather than, like, being too bummed out about it, I just decided, all right, well, I'll make a quick post like, hey, you know what? Something really bad happened to me, but I'm really looking forward to the weekend, and just don't let anything bad bring your energy down. And I just kind of put that in the caption, just as a way of, like, letting people know, like, hey, bad things happen, but it's not the end of the world. As long as you still have your health, and, you still have your life, obviously. Like, there was one instance where I had an issue with someone, and at first my impulse was to get angry, right? But then I calmed down, and I was, all right, things are going to work themselves out. It turns out that person got their, I guess, just desserts, got the karma. They're not hurt or anything, but, just something happened shortly after my confrontation with that person, or not even confrontation, my events. Because, again, it sounds a lot worse than what it really was. It was nothing, but it did affect me more than it affected him. But then he ended up suffering some other ramifications because of that. So it's like, I mean, I'm not happy, but at the same time, it's like, I'm relieved. It's like, things work itself out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so back to the whole thing. So, because we only have about like 8 minutes or so before we go, one question I do have is, like, I mean, I don't know if you kind of addressed it already, but if not, we'll go ahead and repeat it again. But uh, at one point, did you decide, okay, I need to put out this book? Like, at what point? Like, was there like a deciding event, something that happened, or just kind of some kind of epiphany where, like, I need to write a book?
It was a mix of all of it. So I've always been a huge reader. I feel like as a child, they always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know how or what, and so it's always a goal of mine someday. And then in my 20s, I really got into adventure travel, and traveling to New Zealand and Australia, and racing in Namibia, and climbing Kilimanjaro, and running in Iceland, and running across the Grand Canyon, and traveling and doing all these events and crazy swims and mountains. And I would talk to my friends, and they'd be like, "You've got to write about this. You've got to write a book." And I was like, I do, I want to, but I don't want it to just be about me, I did all these things. I want to give back to the reader. I want the reader to get something from it. And so what I was able to do is create this framework. So kind of the three-pillared approach of how endurance sports can help you win at life. And so I have this approach that I've outlined, and so that readers will literally take away concrete pieces to implement the tactics talked about in Go Far. And so they can use those ideas in their own life. And then those ideas kind of explain, well, how did you run 100 miles? Or how did you survive in the desert for 5 days running back to back, carrying all of your supplies on your back? And it's like each thing built upon itself. And it also helped me deal with whatever was going on in my life at that time. Like you said, like we all have struggles or issues. And by participating and training for some of these things, it helped me deal with those things that came up and I had to overcome in my life and continue to have to deal with and overcome and use endurance training and those principles. So I think it all just kind of came together one day of like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this book. I had just had my first child. And, you know, as a woman, you're kind of like, well, I'm a runner now, but when I have kids, am I ever going to be able to run again? Like maybe I'm going to have kids and I'm never going to want to do it again and I'm going to hate it. And so I wanted to kind of go through that of like, okay, I've had children. Like I still like to run. I got back to it. It's still part of me. It's still important to me. So I think after I kind of accomplished that phase of my life, I was like, okay, let's do this. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to share it. And I was able to, you know, get that out and get a book deal. And it's been such an amazing, fun process. And it's given me a way to be on your podcast and others and talk about it within the framework of the book, which I, of course, you know, want everyone to pre-order and buy when it is officially on sale, because it's fun. It's fun to share all of this and talk about it because we do touch on the mental health aspect and the outdoors and how we can use these things to feel successful and feel good and be positive and ultimately enjoy our lives and give back.
Hey, I couldn't have said that a lot better. I mean, that's good. You know, I'm definitely going to pre-order the book because I do want to have you back when the book comes out and actually read it because then we can actually talk about it in more
Talk
detail.
more about it specifically. Sure.
Yeah, because I mean, and you know, the world of mental health, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be talked about. So it's like I'm hoping that the podcast actually keeps going from here on out and it keeps growing and growing. And at the very least, if it helps, like I said, if it gets people to think, you know, at the very least, then I'll be happy. And I do eventually want to get into writing a book as well now because of the podcast, but I want to wait until I learn a little bit more to see what the book is going to be about and how I'm going to go about writing it. But for right now, I mean, I enjoy having these conversations with you and other people that, you know, have the interactions with the outdoors or have had bad experiences or good experiences with regarding mental health. And, you know, definitely I want to, you know, that's the reason why I keep doing this just because like I enjoy that. And I think from the people that I've gotten feedback from, they enjoy hearing the conversations as well.
Well, it sounds like you have some really good stories to tell of your own journey and talking to people. You're going to learn so much. And I think you should definitely start recording your thoughts and ideas and go for it. Cause I can't read anything without the topic of mental health coming up all of a sudden. It's suddenly like a big thing. And so we're right in the middle of it. And I'm just glad that it's getting the mainstream attention because I think that, you know, you have to take responsibility for your own health, wellness, fitness, all of it. And it's nice that corporations are realizing that there is more to it than just someone being in a desk or on the job every day. There's an overall wellness and wholeness concept that we want to address. So I'm so glad you're bringing attention to that. And I am too. I like trying to address that in my daily activities and through the media that I create as well.
Yep, that's awesome. So we're about 2 minutes before the 1 hour mark. It's okay if we go a little bit over, but really quick, let everybody know. Well, actually, before that, any final thoughts that you want to like reemphasize as that we discussed, or anything you want to add, like something like closing statement or anything like that?
Well, I'll just sum up. If you liked what we talked about, make sure to pre order Go Far How Endurance Sports Help You Win at Life by Jennifer Strong McConaughey. Amazon's probably the easiest place, but you can Google Go Far book, and you can also order it through wherever books are sold, including your local bookstore. You can go in and ask for it to be called, or go in and pre-order it as well. And then if you want more information about me specifically, my website is jenniferstrongmcon.com. And I have links to all of my socials on there, like my Instagram, my Twitter, my blog, where I share some of those workout ideas, Facebook author page, and all of that. So my website's kind of my hub for that. But please connect with me. I definitely want to hear from you, and hopefully meet some new people as well, because I want to connect with other outdoor lovers, especially more people in the fishing industry and that kind of thing, because that's really different for me. So I love like connecting in different sort of pockets and communities, and get me thinking differently and having new ideas as well.
Absolutely. And then, so that website again, what was it? So it was Jennifer Strong.
Jennifer Strong, mccon.com. So Jennifer Strong McCon, because I have a long last name, .com.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, and you already kind of took that part, away from, because I was going to say at the very end, like, let everybody know where they can find you, and that's perfect. So I'll definitely put it, like, when it comes out on YouTube, and I'll definitely put it on Spotify. I'll put that like in the description. I'll put your link up there. And
great.
then also, just my final thought is, like, the only thing I'll say is, like, there's a lot of, I mean, if we're on social media a lot, might as well, like, take something productive out of it, or look for something productive. I know a lot of people gravitate towards celebrities, but you have plenty of other resources that, just because they don't have a high profile, they don't get, recognition or whatever. I would definitely discourage people from following celebrities a lot of times. There's exceptions, because, there's people that, put out good information, put out good energy, but do your best to kind of come through that. We already have Jennifer as a resource, very inspiring posts that you can see on her Instagram and in the book. But yeah, never, just because somebody doesn't have a really big social media presence doesn't mean they can't contribute to, anything. And oftentimes they'll make the biggest contributions, and you just kind of have to have patience and, look for that.
For sure. Yeah, we're all looking for that connection. And sometimes it's easier to connect with people that aren't as big or famous, because they're not being pulled in as many directions. So yeah, we're all looking for that human connection. And that's the upside to it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for this episode. I mean, thank you so much for coming on. It was a really great discussion. It went by really fast.
Yeah, it did.
So I appreciate it. And like I said, we're definitely going to keep in touch, because I'm definitely going to want to have you back on once your book is out and once I've gotten a chance to read it. So yeah, we'll see you guys for the next episode, and keep tuned, because Jennifer's going to come back. And also, Jennifer, really quick before I cut the recording, just stay on the conference call.
I will. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.